Let's start with a question. How can we best feed ourselves? It's a simple enough question, but the answers seem kind of complex these days. In a lot of ways, we've given the responsibility of feeding ourselves over to others, usually people quite removed from ourselves. More often than not, they are large corporations with their dependence on long supply chains, resource extraction, cheap labor, and a destructive trail of externalities. The other end of the spectrum is to produce our own food, to quite literally feed ourselves. But unfortunately, this has become quite rare these days. But this is the realm within which the Red Gardens Project exists. Its purpose is to help collapse the physical, economic, and social space between the producers and consumers of food in ways that help to maximize the ecological benefits and our resilience. In order to properly answer the question of how we can best feed ourselves, we need to understand the relevance of context, including location, culture, climate, and, most interesting, I think, scale. This project is looking at what can be produced here in Cloughjordan, in the sparsely populated Midlands of Ireland, with its wet and windy climate, a climate that is unfortunately changing. It focuses on the production of a wide variety of different vegetables that are appropriate for this culture, using a range of different, predominantly organic methods. But the context that I'm most interested in is the scale of production. And the Red Gardens Project is currently exploring two different scales of growing vegetables. The more established part of this project is focused on the scale of a family feeding itself. It consists of a series of 6 individual gardens, each one about 100 square meters or 1,000 square feet, and each one is following a different method of growing. This is the scale that you would expect in a large productive back garden or in an allotment, which could produce enough to supply a family with most of the vegetables that they would eat for most of the year. But it is still small enough to be manageable with a bit of focus, time, and skill. I have labeled these 6 gardens extensive, intensive, no dig, polycrop, perennial, and tunnel. The purpose of this part of the Red Gardens Project is to develop these gardens, these different growing methods, to the point where they can be adequately compared. Perhaps I will end up discovering that one garden is consistently better than the others, that it is perhaps the best method to use to better feed ourselves, at least within this context. Or I may end up concluding that good food can be produced using any of these methods, and that the decision of which method to use would be more dependent on the personal preferences of the grower and the resources that are available. The second scale that this project is exploring is one that is substantially larger than most families would manage, but still quite a bit smaller than most market gardens or farms. This new development is a single plot of about 1,000 square meters or a quarter of an acre, which I'm currently calling the Black Plot. The idea for the Black Plot came about when I started to explore the relative resilience of different methods and different systems of producing food. I think one of the more interesting questions that I was asking was, what is the most resilient scale of food production? And I kept coming back to the possibilities of this less common intermediate scale. This is the kind of scale that could feed 15 to 20 people. And it's big enough to take advantage of some forms of mechanization, but still small enough to be managed by hand if necessary. Beyond supplying an abundance of vegetables and giving me the space and opportunity to try out a lot of interesting things, I figured I really needed to invest some time and effort in exploring the realities, the practicalities, the constraints of producing vegetables at a scale like this. So the 6 smaller gardens of this project are exploring various methods of approaching sufficiency, where a family no longer needs to purchase vegetables. The larger Black Plot, on the other hand, is working in the realm of abundance, to oversupply, to overgrow. I think this is a really interesting concept, as it opens up diverse possibilities of being able to integrate into the surrounding community, to increase our resilience and to better feed more people. I have to admit that the tunnel is my favorite garden, especially on wet and windy days like this. I'm really delighted with the positive reaction to this YouTube channel, and I have plans for a lot more content in the near future. For starters, I will be producing videos explaining the different methodologies of each of the gardens. After that, I have lots of ideas. So keep an eye out for those, subscribe, and thanks for watching.